Hey, welcome back to the show. Tommy Danielsen here. Today we have an extra special treat for everybody. Today we've got an old friend of mine that I've known since back in the days when I was a Flyer Talk moderator. Started that in like 2006, a long time ago. Gary Leff is on the show today, and he writes The View from the Wing, which is the by far most popular frequent flyer blog, and the original OG. He started writing, was in 2003?
May 2002.
So 2002, that's 4 years after Flyer Talk started, and nobody back then knew what the hell a blog was.
Yeah, I mean, I was a Flyer Talk moderator actually then.
Right.
I was as one of the first, so that's how that's how we know each other. But back at the time, blogs were starting, and I just all my friends. I lived in D.C., so my friends were starting political blogs, and I felt like there wasn't anything truly unique that I had to say in that space that nobody else was saying. So just for fun, let's start writing about what people ask me about all the time. And I was the guy everyone asked, what to do with your miles and who to fly and how to get from place to place. And I was just sort of sharing that experience. And at the time for, friends and family and colleagues and, 30 people a day, 100, 500. And I thought it was super cool when I got to 1,000 people a day reading it. And you just do it for long enough and people keep reading out of habit. And so and I often forget that anybody is reading. I just write as though nobody is, and I just say what I'm going to say and make people mad sometimes, and I'm okay with that. And then I forget until I get angry phone calls, usually from corporate PR that some senior executive is really mad at me.
That's cool, and also it's a big and powerful voice that you have. I mean, we talked about that the other day. Looking at the stats online, 5 million people last month read your blog. That's unbelievable.
My God.
Yeah, look, so I'm grateful to everyone that reads it, but it doesn't even factor into how I write, which may be the attraction.
And it's just you. So while the Points guy has 30, 40 employees writing, it's just you. So you start at early in the morning, you start writing before your real job, right?
Look, I mean, I write, in the morning, in the evening. It's what I love to do. It's what I have to say, or it's what amuses me on a given day. And it's been a passion for 22 years, right? So it's that's the way to understand it. Is it's I have a quirky sense of humor, and so if I'm writing something that you don't understand why, it's just like it amuses me. Maybe it'll amuse other people too, or it angers me, or it feels like it's something important to share.
Gary, there's got to be some professional help available for you. There's somebody who can help you out of this.
There is no professional help for me.
Well, congratulations on that, and very happy to have you. From a personal perspective, I've always had huge respect for the work that you do, and you piss off a couple of people because I deal with those people on a day-to-day basis myself, and I honestly don't care either. To be blunt, although I'm happy when I see one of our videos hit 10,000 views in forever. But here we are. So, and today the goal of today's conversation is not to piss anybody off. So if we do get, all three of us know John Wolf fairly well, who is the corporate communication guy for Bonvoy at Marriott. But the focus today on this call is like we've seen a lot of uptick in feedback on Marriott and their loyalty program Bonvoy and the return of investments, and we got a lot of Facebook groups. We own a few of those and facilitate people's debate on various things. So Gary, why is Marriott why does they stand out as being like the dog of hotel loyalty programs?
So I'm not fair. I'm not sure it's fair to say that exactly. I think what is fair to say about Marriott, because look, I'm often critical of Hilton Honors in the sense that they don't promise very much to their top members, right? So they don't guarantee a suite upgrade if it's available. They don't guarantee late checkout. On the other hand, I mean, they keep their commitments because they're not like promising that much. The challenge, I think, with Marriott is that and this is the reverse of what Marriott used to be, a decade ago. Right? Marriott used to be consistently deliver. They're not promising very much, but they're going to give you that same experience every time, and that's why members loved them. And now, I mean, sort of contemporaneously with the acquisition of Starwood, they really became a company that promised a lot and often did not deliver. And so there's this gap between expectations that they set and the reality. And then, so why is this gap and how is it experienced by members? It's very much experienced in, hotels that sort of do what they want. Marriott, only owns order of magnitude 50 hotels. I'm not going to tell you the exact number since, it's been maybe a year since I've looked at the number in their SEC filings. It's about 50 hotels out of, over 8,500 properties that are a part of their system. A couple thousand of the properties perhaps are Marriott managed, but the vast majority are independently or owned by some other entity and managed by another entity. They're franchises. They're using the brand. And they want to make it as simple and as low cost and as easy as possible to bring on these owners. The owners are the real customers. The way that Marriott CEO Jim Capuano puts it is, they're going to put on my tombstone net rooms growth, right? That's the metric. That's what they want. And so they want to make owners happy. And you complain to Marriott about something that a hotel does, and this has been true for years. Universally, it doesn't matter who's right, the hotel's always right. Customer service finds a way to explain that the hotel is right. And if you've got a legitimate beef, they push you back to the hotel and say, got to go talk to them. And that's not how it used to be, say, with Starwood. Look, Starwood, something went wrong. They made it right to you and they built the hotel. They had the agreements in place and enforced them. And ultimately, when you're in Marriott's business is not, for the most part, managing even the hotels, let alone owning them, right? Marriott, what do they bring to the table? They have a brand. And it's that brand that customers attach to. And that's what they deliver to owners. And that's why owners pay them for delivering, heads and beds. And if the owners dilute the brand, Marriott is going to have less value to offer to hotels, less value to shareholders over time. And there's this tricky game and balance between net rooms growth today, maximizing revenue for Wall Street today. Right, in the last quarter, they missed earnings expectations, and so they announced they're cutting $100 million in corporate headquarters expense, large amount of headcount, which means that there's going to be fewer people probably around in a position to sort of enforce, provide real customer service and enforce, brand standards. Make sure that proactively making sure that this stuff's happening, and so. Yeah, it seems like there's been this shift to delivering the customer to the owner and not making sure that customer experience is consistent with promises. And so it's not even necessarily the case that it's worse than some other chains of comparable size, but it does seem like that there's this gap between the marketing and the reality. And customers eventually sort of figure that out. And then they're disappointed. It's hard to be disappointed when someone doesn't promise you much, but when they look, platinum, I'm blathering on already for way too long. But there's this sense in which platinum's promoted as a real elite level. Platinums begin to expect suite upgrades. Platinum's mid-tier. It's not
you can also instantly get it by just getting a credit card. You can be platinum before lunch today.
Well, I think, Gary, what you're saying that's important is a lot of, particularly people who don't live and breathe this stuff as we do, is the realization that Marriott doesn't even manage many of their hotels, let alone own them. And so you're absolutely right. It's they want to keep the owners happy, so they keep the Marriott flag waving in front of the hotel. And they don't want to aggravate them too much. So when you call, they're going to find all kinds of reasons to explain away. I think most people I bet if you polled everybody who pulls into a Marriott parking lot, first of all, they probably think Marriott owns them all. And if not that, they'll certainly be certain that Marriott runs their management because it's a Marriott hotel. I don't think I'm far off on that.
So let's go into the a little bit into the biggest pain points. And as you said, Gary, when like before the merger of the two programs, Starwood Preferred Guest and Marriott Rewards, happened and became Bonvoy, Tom Cosick was the boss of Marriott Rewards at that time. He was brought in along with the CMO that was hired also at the time. Karen, what's her name again? Karen something. That was the CMO at that time, and they upgraded the point because before then it was kind of like Hilton Honors is now. There was no guarantee for a lot of things. There were no like upgrades or anything like that happening. So that's when it kind of changed. And the 4 p.m. guaranteed checkout, late checkout, has want to be one of the staples. And according to the terms and conditions, they can exclude resorts and convention hotels, but everybody else is supposed to be giving 4 p.m. checkout. And that obviously is a huge problem because a lot of properties are saying that it's based on availability. And if you look at these member groups online, a lot of people remember the old days of Marriott where it wasn't a guarantee. So how do we solve it? So pretty much what you said is accurate. People say, hey, I need checkout at 4 or I need checkout at 3. Oh no, sorry, we can't do it today because we're full. What does the customer do? What can he do? Probably nothing, right?
Look, I mean, this is a challenge for, it is challenging for hotels. It was one of the first changes that Marriott instituted after the Starwood deal. Starwood had guaranteed 4 p.m. late checkout, and they brought it over to Marriott. And at the time, I had the GM of Marriott Hotel actually told me, yeah, we're not going to do that. Right, and because they saw this is like a pain. You know, Hilton doesn't guarantee 4 p.m. checkout. It doesn't guarantee their checkout at all. It's if available. Neither does IHG. Hyatt does. And when I can't honestly remember the last time I checked into a Hyatt where I was not proactively offered the 4 p.m. checkout. They do.
Well, you've been needing your 4 p.m. checkout.
Right, and Marriott is hardly alone in the asset-light model within the hotel industry. Most hotels, the large chains, are not owned, by the chains. But Hyatt has done a good job of instituting this. Marriott hasn't done a great job of enforcing it. If you talk, odds on, if you call Marriott customer service, they'll tell you that it's subject to availability, even though that's not what their own rules say. At least that's been my experience and what I've heard from readers. My own approach with a hotel is not to ask for a late checkout, but to tell them that I will be taking my elite, late checkout at whatever time. Let them tell me, no, we will not honor your elite checkout. At
or
some
make
level,
them figure it out. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I let them know. I want to let you know I'll be taking the 4 p.m. elite checkout.
Right.
And that's how I approach it. And I haven't been denied it. There may be some consternation. Oh, I have to check. We'll call you back. But they've come back and confirmed it. But you don't want to have a fight for your benefits, and for the brand, you want the experience to be seamless, and you want the member to feel taken care of, and that should be more important to the hotel chain, right, than the hotel. And they want to make sure then that the hotel honors it, as opposed to sort of being more hands off, because that's how you create value that you then deliver customers to owners and create, generate revenue over time.
So should they just abolish the whole 4 p.m. guaranteed, or?
Look, so I do think that it matters for competitive purposes. I also think that Marriott probably does have too many people that are entitled to it, given that it's available at platinum, and Marriott has silver, gold, platinum, titanium, and ambassador that they call elite level, with 2 p.m. available to golds. And so maybe it's too much. They have to figure out how to manage it in a way that they can actually deliver on the promised benefits. When you get the status with a credit card, given the number of people they have, but I think it's more important to actually deliver than to promise.
Well, it's exactly what's happening with airline clubs. Delta is saying, oh, well, in 2025, even if you got the card that lets you into the club, you can only make, 5 round trip, visits if you have this card or the American Express, and they're doing it simply because of too many people. And Marriott maybe has to take a hard look at that.
Well,
Got
I
too many
think that
people
it's
wanting this late
important.
checkout. You can't do it.
I think you're right about that, Rudy, but I think that it's also important to realize that the standard hotel check-in was at 3 o'clock and checkout was at noon. That has now been creeping, specifically in the U.S. market, more so than ever, more so than any other market. Now it's like check-in is at 4, some places at 5, and checkout is at 10 or 11. So they got a bigger window, and the reason why they're having such problem more so than before is because in the U.S. they haven't hired enough people after the pandemic to clean the rooms.
Right.
So the check-in or the window that you have right to be in your hotel room is much smaller than what it used to be. So something is really disconnected. And also I think that it's very, very important, and I'm sure, Gary, that's the same for you. I really don't use it that much, the 4 p.m. checkout. I use it once in a while when it's important to me, and I also have a strong approach to how I do it. And to be honest, I haven't had a Marriott deny me either, because it's probably so rare. But the windows are larger, and that's there. I will say that they're creating their old problem because they're selling more credit cards, and they have decided to have one that has a top tier, or which is in reality it's not, because $650 will give you that card, that status immediately. I think that's one part of it, but I think also a big part of it is, of course, that they not staffed enough.
Yeah, hotels have gone to great lengths to cut back on housekeeping staff. Right. I mean, and this has been a long time effort. It used to be that they say, look, we want to save the money and we're going to split the savings with you and give you points if you opt out of housekeeping, right? Make a green choice, right? We'll tell ourselves that it's like for the environment,
Yeah. And then COVID came along and gave them the perfect excuse not to clean everybody's room every day, and et cetera. Yeah. And they've carried that.
And they want and look, and it was harder to find staff, certainly at a price point that people were willing to pay, and they stuck with that and tried to stick with it as much as possible. And Capuano said that they were looking for ways that they could cut out our costs, say at breakfast. And then they wanted to see if they could figure out how to cut costs by not making hotels buy alarm clocks in the rooms anymore, because you have your own phone. And there's all these efforts to cut costs. And if you don't have the staff, the thing about housekeeping is that you need a certain amount throughout the day because people check out at different times, you turn rooms and have problems, right? But it's a situation where, there's a concentrated period of time where you need a lot of staff and not most of the rest of the time of even a shift. And so you hate the idea of having all this underutilized staff and overpaying during this short period of time. And so you want to stretch it out and you want to have fewer people, and it makes it harder to turn the rooms quickly. But that's also the product that you are selling. There's a check-in time. People are paying to be able to check into the room at that time.
Right.
There are people that you incentivize for competitive reasons to give you business with the promise that they can have those few extra hours. In the hotels where it's actually promised to me, I'll often maybe prefer the late checkout at a resort, where it's not guaranteed, and I understand that. Or the early check-in, is a nice thing. Marriott has the Your 24 benefit. You got to be an ambassador now for that. It's not like Starwood at 75 night level, and then hotels have to agree to it. But you want to check in the middle of the night in Asia. You get there early in the morning in Europe, or these are nice things, and you offer them to your best customers to entice that ongoing business. But that means that you need to deliver it, and so you have to make sure that the benefit scales to the promise, or that you invest in the delivery. And look, there are hotels then that have the challenge. Gosh, we hate. We had to honor the late checkout. Now we haven't turned the room. Now we're not delivering rooms on time, and tough luck to that new guest, right? Although I'll say that a few weeks ago on Dawes Fifth Avenue in New York, I check in and they told me that they had something like a third of their check-ins the prior night had been globalist members. It's a globalist heavy hotel. I understand that a lot of folks that have access to late checkout if they want it. My room wasn't ready. And I said, well, help me understand. You have a published check-in time, and that's what I agreed to pay for, right? And they're like, oh, let me get a manager. Manager comes out, no argument, no questions, and just says to me, apologies, sir, would 35,000 points be appropriate? Oh, that's the the high level redemption at top number of nights points that it could cost for a free night there. And it was like going to be an hour until my room was ready. I'm like, fair, all right, all good. I've got no beef with that. You're wrecking. If it had been fewer points, if they give me 20,000 points, okay. Like the idea was, there's a recognition that you have not delivered the thing that you sold to me, and therefore you shouldn't be charging me full price for that thing.
Right.
Well, it's so much easier to say that than to get into an argument about how, well, we don't really guarantee it, sir.
Right.
That's the problem with these, and that's conflict in any service industry where someone decides to become defensive, immediately go on the attack rather than saying, look, we can diffuse this with 35,000 points or whatever.
Right.
And that's the whole difference between great service and not great service, and being antagonistic and being generous and hospitable.
Well, I think that we're into a different territory here also when it comes to checking in or check-in time at hotels, because that's a contractual thing. I have the room on your website. It says I will have it at this particular time until this particular time. And it should be an expectation that it's available. I think that that's not even an elite benefit. But we've got a specific one property that has been a huge offender in the union-heavy New York, which has always been our friend Gary and I have a common friend that's been in the hotel industry who was a big cheese at the JW Marriott by Central Park for a long time, and he's now out in Denver working somewhere. And he was like, how much the union are required to paying each housekeeper or paying the housekeeper per room in a suite, so they get extra amount of money. So it's a huge cost in New York, a true big cost in New York. Hosting events there, we know how that goes. But the St. Regis in New York has had multiple posts in the last few weeks where one guest is saying that, like we talked about, she earlier, she had to change in the bathroom in the lobby because her room wasn't ready at 5:34, and she had dinner reservations and theater reservations, her and her husband. They both changed in the lobby, and because the hotel said, sorry, we don't know when your room is going to be ready. And at 5:34 or at $1,500 a night, that feels a little bit outrageous. There's another guest also who had used 280,000 points for 2 nights, which is, a lot of points for a couple. Well, I guess for $1,500 a night, it's not really that much, but it's let's just say that it's a lot of points you can stay a few weeks at the Chattanooga courtyard, and the person was at 8:00 at night, didn't get their room until 8:00 at night, and nothing was offered other than 2 drinks at the what is it called, the bar where the original
Nat King Cole Bar.
Exactly. And they offered a couple of 2 drinks tickets there, but unfortunately for her or for him, there was no room at the bar. You have to have a reservation to get in there because it's so popular, because it's where the original Bloody Mary was made. And this was a Starwood hotel, right? So it's an original Starwood, the top tier Starwood hotel. So what do you do in that situation? And both of them had reached out to Marriott and not gotten any help to get this resolved.
You give them the presidential suite if it's available, if you have to. You do anything, you're not going to use the presidential suite that night or any great suites that.
Yeah, they haven't been successful. So obviously that's a problem.
You give them whatever it takes. 8:00 at night is ridiculous.
There's 2 issues. One is the hotel issue at what's supposed to be a genuine luxury property. Right? And that is, how do you solve the issue of hospitality? And frankly, that's the thing that sets them apart from, cheaper hotels and Airbnbs, right? And so that is your unique selling proposition. You have to be able to deliver on it. And so, not giving the customer the room who's paying for it, the experience of changing in the lobby is completely unacceptable at that caliber of property. But then the hotel is getting you as a guest, because of the brand and their association with the loyalty program. And so, they have to be able to go to that program for help when the hotel doesn't deliver. And this is an area where I think Marriott has a huge opportunity for improvement, is that frontline customer service, where it often seems like the inclination is to either explain why whatever the hotel is doing is right, and whether it is or not, or feign helplessness and just kick you back to the hotel. And that is not the experience that they need to deliver on. And it's not the experience that Starwood used to offer, including obviously with the same brand. They would genuinely just provide the service, build a hotel for it, and that would be the end of the conversation, because they had to protect their relationship with the customer, and for the benefit of not just their business, but for all of the hotels that they work with, so that they can keep delivering that customer. Because if you have a customer paying, call it $1,500 a night for a hotel room, and that doesn't get the hotel room, they're going to sour on the experience and no longer have confidence in booking at that price point with that brand.
Mm-hmm.
And they no longer have confidence that or their points accrual in the program delivers with confidence. Oh, am I being shunted aside because I used my points? Now my points, they're not actually worth anything anymore, and the whole value proposition that's being offered falls apart.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Well, so my approach, I had a similar situation, and that was also my advice to this girl or this lady that was checking in at the St. Regis and was going to the theater. I said, I would give them an option saying that you could relocate me. The Four Seasons around the corner seems to have availability. Just opened up. We talked about that on the show last week, Rudy, how they've been closed for a while and finally opened up a brand new season. That could be an option. And I suggest you make accommodations to that. I have theater tickets and I have dinner reservations. This is where I draw the line, and I'm paying $1,500. Your call. Those are the two options I'm presenting to you. I had a similar situation at the St. Regis Monarch Beach right before the Marriott, right after the Marriott days, and was reaccommodated to the Ritz-Carlton down the street because they didn't have the room ready and it was oversold, and that was a good resolution for me, and it was solved very quickly. I think that a lot of these guys are kind of if you are not firm enough, they're not going to do anything, because they've probably been trained to see, look how the guest is reacting and see if you can get away with this. I wonder how that goes on in the back room there.
Well, it's a matter also of a general manager or whoever your management is at the hotel empowering their staff to fix it right away, instead of stonewalling and or worse, becoming aggressive and then finally calling the manager in. I mean, the most successful hotel manager, I've told you this story. I was a member of the Four Seasons Health Club in the Four Seasons in Washington, D.C. for years when I lived there. And the GM was a good friend of mine, and we would sometimes work out and eat like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock together. And we once stepped up to the desk, and there was a woman, a guest at the Four Seasons, and she was saying to the woman behind the counter, but I know I booked my massage for 6 o'clock. And the Four Seasons woman said, well, I'm sorry, it was really 6:30. No, I'm sure it was 6 o'clock. And I expected my friend to step in as the general manager and make everything all right. And he looked right at his employee behind the counter, the young woman behind the counter, and said, what are you going to do to make Ms. Leff happy? And she sort of stopped and thought for a minute. She said, Ms. Leff, I'm sorry we've had a misunderstanding here, but first of all, your massage will be complimentary. And can I invite you? The bar is right next door. Can I invite you to go have a snack or a drink or whatever, and we will cover that. And that was my lesson, the young man in the general manager, empower the employee rather than letting it get, and then it gets to the manager, and then it gets whatever. But managers,
Gary, what Rudy is touching on here is quite interesting, because you mentioned also before the policy that Ritz has, that they are supposed to be empowering their employees.
Right. Well, Ritz became Marriott, and I don't know. I've stayed at a couple of Ritz, and I've been perfectly happy. And I don't think it's because I'm an old guy, but it seems that Ritz-Carlton is not as Ritz-Carlton as it used to be. The ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen ethos that's posted behind where the employees get dressed for work, et cetera.
They also wouldn't used to franchise those either.
True.
And that, look, when you have a model, so there's, hotel asset light model can separate out, hotel management from ownership of underlying real estate. That's one thing, and they certainly have owners to please at that point too. But then you separate out the actual running of the hotel, right, from the marketing of the hotel, and you create a real conflict of incentives. You no longer have the people working for you that you tell them what they're supposed to do. You have people working for the owner directly, and their incentive is to maximize revenue from the individual guest, who they may never see again, rather than any sort of a long-term relationship that they're building. The long-term relationship was with the brand, the chain, not the individual property, and so you have that mismatched incentives. And the way that it's possible to overcome contractually, as long as those are really enforced. But when they're either not tight in the contract or not, carefully enforced out of a fear of alienating owners for, short-term, rooms growth, you put yourself in a position where you degrade the brand. And I think that I'm not sure what Ritz-Carlton stands for anymore. Certainly, my experiences in places like Marina Del Rey or Tyson's Corner.
Oh my goodness!
These are like, but the brand is supposed to mean a consistent experience wherever you go. You trust
You're
the brand
paying
to tell
for
you
it.
what you're going to have, and those are certainly outlier properties that are not going to give you that. But honestly, my first experience where I called something a resort factory 12 years ago at their Grand Cayman property. It was one of these places where you, if you didn't put the book on the beach chair at 8 o'clock in the morning, you were 4 rows back from the beach. And that was, a base room going, weekend night in season was going for about $1,200 a night. And that was, that's not the experience that you expect. And that very same property, I remember sitting at breakfast, getting up to go to the buffet, not even like a second time, getting up to going to the buffet, and they're turning my table to give it to someone else, right? Because I wasn't sitting there. Like, wait a minute, this is not the
Sounds relaxing,
sort of thing. Right?
Yeah.
Every man for himself at the Ritz-Carlton.
Yeah, so let's talk. We're running a little bit short on time here. I want to touch a little bit about something that Marriott actually is supposed to. They have a fine system. When the property doesn't deliver something, like for example, they have to walk you, or a benefit is not given to you, and offered an elite benefit at check-in and things like that, they have fines in their terms and condition that the guest is supposed to get $100 cash or $200 cash, whatever the case may be here, and we have seen one property that's been going super rogue. They've decided that we're gonna.
Tommy, hang on. How do you know that? I've never seen that posted anywhere.
It's on their website, Marriott.
It is, most certainly is.
Okay,
and when I was walked from the Westin in DC, the one that's downtown kind of in DC, we were there last summer, and I was and I checked in online because I knew that the hotels were going to be super full. I checked in online in advance and got to the hotel around midnight from BWI. Melinda and I got there and walked in the lobby, and the guy in front of us was super angry. He was like yelling, and I was like kind of chuckling to myself. And he was being walked to like a Hilton Garden Inn somewhere close by, or something like that. And then it was my turn. And it's like, yeah, I assumed that you have a room for me, and it's
checked in. Right.
I was like, yeah, Mr. Danielsen, I apologize, but we don't have a room for you. And I was like, we have you at the Hilton Capitol, the one that's up the hill there, and you have to go there. And proactively, I was given a crap load of points, and I got a check in the mail for the money. I think it was $200, something like that.
Did you ask for that? Any of that?
No, I didn't ask for anything. It all happened automatically. The property gave me also because I would, they should have stayed my room because I was technically already checked in, right? Right. And I tried to be preemptive. I knew it was going to be full because I have been trying to get a hotel in DC for that day, for that particular night, and we had a booking at the Thompson the next couple of nights for an event. So I booked it in there and had a room for like $800, and then all of a sudden the Westin 2 days or 3 days before, a room on using my credit card voucher, the 85,000 one that was expiring in 2 weeks anyways, became available. So somebody canceled a standard room. Then I was lucky, I snagged it. So I knew that it was full. I've been looking for days to get out of jail on that because I was paying myself. And so that's why I checked in. But yeah, that was a good way they handle it. But we've got a property, the Weston SFO. 3 people have been posting lately that I've seen, and I haven't had time to look very much, unfortunately, but I just took the highlights preparing for this call. They checked in and they say, hey, I see that you've stayed here before, but we have a policy change where we have decided to opt out of giving free breakfast to elites or to platinums and above. And what? Yeah, you got points to check in and a $10, an option to do a $10 food and beverage voucher, which is kind of the benefit you have anyways, right? So that was the thing. So it happened a few weeks later also, and it's this guy was told by Marriott corporate that they would investigate it, and they did, and they got back to him and said, hey, we've investigated this, and you need to deal with the property. So meaning that it didn't get resolved. And there's supposed to be $100 for that, isn't it, Gary?
Yeah, I mean, so the specific amount varies by the benefit and brand. There's a chart that'll show what the benefits guarantee that applies in each case, and it can be a challenge to claim it. Usually, if you are persistent enough and the case is clear cut enough, most of the time you can prevail, but it's often a challenge. And fundamentally, that's the thing that that the brands need to focus on is figuring out what benefit that they can deliver, delivering it every time, making sure that it is a seamless experience, and that when something goes wrong, as things do happen, that there is a clear process for making the customer feel heard and making them feel that the problem has been addressed, not blown off. It's not at all a unique challenge for Marriott. It seems as though in recent times there's been a greater disconnect between the promise and the reality on the ground, and that there hasn't always been a clear way of making it easy to get these things addressed. But often that's just because they're promising more, maybe more than they can deliver, more than they want to deliver, more than their hotels want to deliver. I'm not sure that the answer is just to follow Hilton and not promise anything, but honestly, the Hilton elites are probably in many cases less cantankerous because of it, because they're not being promised something and then not getting it, which is worse. And I think all brands can learn that basic lesson. I think that's where I'd probably leave it.
Right. Yeah, I think I agree with that. The last thing, creativity. What will they think of next? Which was an interesting thing that yesterday. Well, I think that to non-elite members, this has been an offering for all the chains. I've seen both Hyatt and Hilton do it. But an ambassador was told by the Aloft Perimeter that in order to facilitate for you and to make your check-in easier and be ready, we might be able to do a 2 p.m. check-in for you, or before even, for a $50 fee.
Right. Well, I mean, it's a crapshoot.
That's creative.
Maybe that's not a problem for them, and maybe it's a great deal. But you have no way of knowing until you step up to the desk at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. and they go, "Oh, your room's not ready. You should have paid the $50 fee." But who knows? I mean, that's a crapshoot for the
well. This ambassador wrote to the hotel and said he needed the room early, and it was offered to pay $50. And for somebody that has for those who don't know, ambassador has a spend requirement of $23,000. Is it 24?
And that's a minimum. It's not an average.
Right. No, that's a minimum you have to spend in order to get the status. You can have 250, you can have 365 nights a year at a hotel at Marriott and still not get ambassador. All is based on you have to spend that kind of money. And that's excluding taxes and also many other incidentals that a hotel doesn't count. So at 2 p.m., so the guy wants to check in at noon and they're going to charge him $50 for it?
Not right. Of course not.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. What would you say? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I hope
All right.
some
So,
hoteliers have
Gary,
learned a
what?
lot
So,
of lessons.
I think you concluded it fairly well. I don't think anything is going to happen. I think that they're still going to chuck down the road and just be, the people who stay in the hotel rooms are secondary, and the main customers are the franchisees, and that's where we are. Are we going to expect anything else, or is other than maybe they kind of adjust the benefits to going back to what they were and being more like Hilton?
Not unless the
I mean, at
hotel
this point, I
big
think
watches this clip, this conversation.
yeah. I think only when consumers change their behavior and recognize where they're getting value where it's not delivered, and shift their business.
Yep.
And as for me personally, I have this year I have a credit card, and I have 7 nights above that with Marriott. That's what I have. And I stayed 182 nights at hotels this year. What does that tell you?
I got it. All right.
All right. I think that at
you,
the end
guys.
of the day, it's been a pleasure talking with Rudy, of course, who is here almost every week, and of course my dear friend Gary Leff, who is probably one of the world's leading experts in anything loyalty program and travel. Thanks, guys, for joining us this week,
Thank you.
and
Thank you,
for
Tom.
giving up your time to talk about. It didn't end up being a big Marriott bashing, other just stating the facts, right?
Yep. Yep.
So we'll see you guys next week, and
Thank you.
thanks for joining.
Thanks all.